Hello, I'm Judy Stiles. Thank you for tuning in for our annual Year in Review program. In the next half hour, we'll take a look back at some of the topics covered in 2018. They included a wide range of subjects with more than 100 guests. We begin with a look at some of the interviews featuring elected officials. Our first interview is with Joplin Mayor Michael Seibert, who ended his term on the council in April. He reflected on his service to the city and the state of the city.
Well, I've had the privilege of serving on council for almost 10 years. The last 4 as mayor, and by charter you cannot serve as mayor any more than 2 two-year terms. So I have termed out from that in that area. So it was just the right time for me to step down, and my hope is we've got good candidates out there. They can come in and continue to move this great city forward.
You mentioned the candidates who are going to be on the election. Looking back, what sparked your interest maybe the first time to say, I know you were appointed, but then why did you say I want to run for council?
Well, it's once you get involved with the community, it really is, it's really, to me, it is the most efficient way for me to be engaged with my community, because as a council member, you just touch on so many different aspects of the community, and I felt led to that, and I thought that would be the best way that I could give back to my community.
Of course, you're a zone representative and moved from zone representative to mayor.
Correct.
That was a big decision as well, to say, throw my hat in the ring, I'd like to be mayor.
It was. I knew the time requirements, and I felt like that I could manage those even though I have a full-time career. I felt like that it was an important time within the community, and it was something I felt strongly and wanted to do.
Well, I know leaders of government, whether it's the state or the national, even the city, they turn to the leader to talk about the state of the state or the state of the city. So in your opinion, if someone were to ask you, what is the state of Joplin now? How would you characterize that?
Well, I think for those of us, especially those that have been involved with the city prior to and immediately after the tornado and then the years after, through all of the death and devastation and destruction that we had in our community, the goal was to not be known as a community that had that incredible tragedy, but we wanted to be known as the community that recovered and grew through that tragedy. And I really feel like, whatever metric you want to look at, the city's population, low unemployment, the school systems are thriving, whether it's private, parochial, higher education. The residents did not leave our community after the tornado. They stayed here. We've had a number of corporations expand. We've had a number of corporations locate here and decide to build here. We've gotten a new medical school that's going to have an incredible impact. So when you look at how we are, the things that we've accomplished, I think we all should be very proud of how we have recovered through a time of incredible challenge in our community.
We also looked at state issues this past year. In the spring, I visited with State Representative Charlie Davis about activities in Jefferson City. He began by discussing progress in the legislative session.
I think so far it's been very productive. We haven't gotten everything across the finish line, as you know, and most of the viewers know. The last month of our session is usually when we get the bulk of our legislation across the finish line. And the reason that is, of course, we're getting testimony from individuals, and it takes a long time to go through the process. We've all seen the what was the name of the program? The School Rock, where how a bill becomes law.
Right, step by step.
And it's a long, drawn-out process, and it is very cumbersome, and sometimes it takes months to get things across the finish line. And I think that's good. Slow government, I think, is really the appropriate government to make sure that we do get it right. But so far this year, I think is very productive. We have done some things that are allowing businesses to create jobs all across the state, which is one of the main things that we need to focus on.
Focus on economic development. Are there any things that you would point to that we've already passed this bill? This is something we've taken care of in the first 2 weeks.
One of the most important things that we can do is for government to get off the backs of businesses through the regulatory process. Government many times regulates businesses to the point that they go somewhere else. They want to go to a state that's got favorable tax policy and favorable regulatory policy. One of those entities, of course, is the aluminum smelter down in southeast Missouri. We actually had a special session at the end of last year to address that issue. Well, it has been announced that they are starting up. They are hiring about 450 employees at a average salary of about $80,000. And for the Boot Heel of Missouri, which is usually a low-income part of the state, that is a huge boost for that area, not only in 450 people getting jobs, but the revenue that's going to come in, number one, to the state, and then also the sales tax revenue and the amount of money that's going to be spent in that local community. So if I look back at so far some of the things that we have done, protect life as well as to allow businesses to create jobs. And that's huge, especially for that area.
And that was something acted on pretty quickly,
very quickly, absolutely.
Dealt with that and tying that together. Well, as the session's gone along, I know people have followed it, a lot of topics, a lot of issues. Of course, right now, everybody's talking about the budget because the House, you've kind of handled your side of what are we going to do with the budget?
We've got our portion done, and now the budget is over in the Senate's lap. We're going to see what they do to it. Most people that understand the process knows that once the Senate gets the budget, they pretty much do what they want with it, and then they send it back to us. We don't agree, so we go to what's called a conference committee, and we fight. We make sure that our priorities are strengthened, and then they fight for their priorities also.
Another local legislator reached his limit on terms served in Jefferson City, Senator Ron Richard. I had a chance to visit with him in the fall as his years of service neared an end. Looking back at 2002 when you first went to Jefferson City and now 2018, how would you compare things then and now, kind of in general terms, in the state legislature and the law?
Well, in 2002, I was sworn in 2003. I really didn't know the process, didn't know the rules, and didn't know how to begin. And it took a while to figure that out, and over time I did. And then, going fast forward to today, I'm pretty good at the rules, the process, and how to get things done. So it's a learning experience, but the ones that succeed in leadership learn it quicker and are better at it the most. And I've been pretty fortunate. I've always been pretty good about the rules and getting people to agree with some of my concepts and ideas, and always had a pretty good following.
And you really put yourself on the map with recognition, leadership in the House and the Senate side, and in a way put Joplin on the map as far as the first person to be in the role of leadership in both of those.
Well, I don't know about that, but Dick Webster, the building we're in, was the first Speaker of the House from Southwest Missouri, and I was the second. So we've had a lot of good elected officials. I'm not sure I'm the one that is a hallmark to brag on. We had a lot of good ones.
Well, working with the role of leadership, a lot of people serve many years, perhaps there's other people who've served 16 years in both the House and the Senate. What sparked your interest in the leadership, saying, I want to go and be a leader in the House, and then we'll go on I want to lead in the Senate?
Well, sometimes it just happens when people choose you to be a committee chairman, and if you get lucky and excel at that, and I've always been very interested in creating jobs, especially in Southwest Missouri, and I started that when I was mayor of Joplin. And I just progressed all the way through, and that's a common theme in every community, in every part of the state, every county, that everybody wants to create jobs and make their place a good place to live and retire, and create more growth, and they have a better economy. So I was always good at that, and that's what led me to be a chairman of economic development in the House, and from there a speaker. The doors always swung open, and I was pretty lucky. I was lucky enough to notice that and walk through them, and had a lot of support.
Great. And working with people on both sides, as far as we hear so much today about partisan politics, I know you've made statements of, but you have to be willing to work with people.
Well, I always did until, I work with them until you can't work them anymore. And then being in charge of a supermajority, you can do what you want to do anyway. But it's always nice to get everybody going the same direction. Dick Webster said something one time, that not all the good members are on our side of the aisle, and not all the bad ones are on their side.
I also had a chance to feature national issues on Newsmakers in 2018 with Congressman Billy Long. He shared his thoughts about activity in Washington.
Well, we've made a lot of headway on the abortion issue. We've passed a lot of bills in that regard, and unfortunately, a lot of the bills that we've passed in other areas are sitting over in the Senate side. So it's time for the senators to take up some of our bills and pass them. We just had a big change at the State Department. Mike Pompeo was just sworn in as the new Secretary of State, and I think you're going to see a big difference there. North Korea, one of the big things that's happened this year, and I'd said all along that if you look at what H.W. did, Herbert Walker Bush did with North Korea, if you look what Bill Clinton did his 8 years after him, what George W. Bush did in his 8 years with North Korea, what President Obama did in his 8 years with North Korea, over that 24-year period or whatever it was, North Korea has nuclear weapons and they have ballistic missiles. Now, whether they have figured out the technology to marry the two and miniaturize and be able to deliver a nuclear missile to the United States, we don't know if they can do that yet, but all the experts say that it's sure there, that they're going to have it soon if they don't now. And everyone was so upset with this president because he was, talk tough, and he tweeted a little rocket man and said he was going to blow him away, and everybody said, oh, he's going to start a war, he's going to start a war. Well, if you remember, that's a lot like what they said about President Reagan, that he was unhinged. He said all options are on the table, he's going to start World War III. Well, instead of starting World War III, the Berlin Wall came down. And so now that Kim Jong-un has agreed to meet with he's already met with our new Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo, and they kind of snuck Pompeo over there over the Easter break. We weren't even apprised of it in Congress. And so I think those things are good. The North and South are talking now. They're doing things they've never done before. Kim Jong-un says he will denuclearize. Now, can you trust him or not? But we're going to find out. And all of Trump's naysayers say, oh, nothing will come of it, nothing will come of it. But I say let him try, because Trump's a pretty good negotiator, and we've gotten him a lot further than we ever have before. So that's one of the really big things that's happened in the first few months of this year is the situation with North Korea and kind of, turning down the heat on that, because it was looking pretty dangerous there for a while.
We now take a look at news shared from local communities. I found out about businesses in Carl Junction and developments in Webb City in these interviews.
Well, this is the 7th year for the Expo, and we're just very pleased with the fact that it's a sold-out event. It's been a sold-out event every year, and it gets bigger and it gets better every year.
So what is the goal, Garrett? I know you're the chair of the Expo committee, planning committee. Your goal each year as you look at this, and what do you try to accomplish with this?
We're just trying to make an environment that promotes our local businesses and let them engage with their customer base, engage with people they may not normally get to engage with, and really get the word out and kind of showcase their business, really try to get them out there and get them some more support from the community.
Now, when you say Carl Junction, define the area you're talking about. Of course, you obviously have the city limits of Carl Junction, but what kind of region are you discussing?
We do, but this is a chamber event, and we're the Carl Junction area Chamber of Commerce. And so our service area is about a 60-mile radius. So these are actually the region's best businesses located in Carl Junction, Joplin, Neosho. But this gives you an opportunity to find all these different businesses under one roof.
So it's a chance for businesses to share as well as community members to come in and visit with the businesses.
Yes, absolutely. A chance for anybody within the area that might shop at these businesses to come in and see what's available.
I think it was about a year ago we were talking about a development on the east side of the town that you were working on, the East Road development, which at that time it was a process. Now you actually have things happening there.
Yes, Centennial Retail and Industrial Park is well under construction now. We have Redemption Motorsports opened their doors. We have ECWB, who has built a strip mall that is about to open. We've had, he's moved his lawyer's office in there. There's some duplexes under construction. And then, of course, we have the big one, which is Atwood's, building a 65,000 square foot retail center. And then across the street from there, we have a hotel and convention center currently under contract and hopefully to be breaking ground here in the next few weeks.
So would you say as city leaders this is happening as fast as you anticipated?
Oh, and I'm not sure anything happens as fast as your wishes and whims would be. But once the first domino fell, which was an announcement about Atwood's, it seems like everything else was in play. And so we are about more than 75% of that property now is spoken for, under contract in some way, or being built on. And so we feel very good about that. And so what seemed very slow in starting, and what people looked at what's happening, well, it's behind the scenes. Now get ready, because it's going to pop out of the ground rapidly.
So you're going to have a lot of changes in that area. It took some time to get that, as you mentioned, but it was a special project as well. It's just the rehab and things that were involved in that land.
Yeah, the roundabout has probably been thought of as a dream over 10 years ago. Then it was built probably 5 years ago. The land sat kind of vacant for a while, but I think the council has been really good about making sure that what goes in there is what we need and what best fits the community. I mean, we could have sold it to some used car salesmen or portable building sales types things in a minute, but we've looked for what fits the need of the community the best.
So how do you work on deciding or looking at the needs of the community, the mix of what it takes?
Well, there's a couple of things. One, if it's private land, we have very little to say about that. It's not government's job to tell a private person who they can sell their land to. That land just so happened to be mostly ours. And then with the roundabout, Carl, we can laugh about this. How many times were we criticized for having a roundabout to nowhere? And it appeared that way for a while, but we knew behind the scenes, just wait, and that land wasn't costing us to own. Let's see what it is.
Our topics in 2018 were not all political. At the first of the year, we found out about a special anniversary year for George Washington Carver National Monument.
Well, it's a very special year. It's the 75th anniversary of George Washington Carver's passing. He passed away on January 5th, 1943. And a couple months later, in July of 1943, George Washington Carver National Monument was established. So it's the 75th anniversary of both Carver's death and the establishment of the monument. So it's a really big year for us.
So we have the establishment of the monument, you have the dedication, the growth throughout the years. There's a lot of things we can cover in this half hour today for our viewers.
Absolutely.
Starting that. So let's start with the background. I guess for people who aren't familiar, how that idea came about, that we would like to have something recognizing George Washington Carver.
Well, it was really a grassroots movement that began while Carver was still alive, actually, which is very interesting. Spearheaded by a local man from Granby named Richard Pylant. He got a lot of support for establishing the monument. And of course, there were a lot of other organizations that jumped on too, such as the St. Louis coalition of the NAACP. There was a lot of congressional support. Harry Truman was a big supporter of the monument. So just a mere couple of months after Carver passed away, the monument was established.
And of course, part of the National Park Service. This is national recognition.
As part of it's the first national park dedicated to an African American, and the first national park dedicated to an individual that was not an American president.
So historical steps right there, getting things in our own backyard here in Southwest Missouri started in those times and tying things together.
Absolutely.
So the idea to the concept, and I know you have some pictures, and I know the audience loves to see pictures, so I think we'll kind of have pictures up there while we're talking so they can understand what we're seeing. Some planning went in between 43 and the actual dedication, when you actually had a facility to dedicate.
It took about 10 years before the park was actually dedicated. And several thousand people showed up for that moment, and we captured a few of them in photographs.
Okay, let's look at some of the pictures as we talk along here then. Some of the pictures from the dedication, some of the history of what we have.
Okay. This is from the 1953 dedication, I believe.
So they're gathering, and that stone that has the plaque on it is still part of your park.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. The dedication plaque is towards the beginning of the Carver Trail.
So it's still there. So as we go through, we'll just click through these and look at the next picture. Speeches were given that day. I mentioned it was a very momentous occasion. A lot of people came to gather.
Absolutely, absolutely. And a very diverse crowd as well.
And you have, of course, being a national monument, you had national attention that day. It's not every day
we sure did.
The U.S. government unveils a new monument.
Harold Ickes, the U.S. Secretary of the Interior, was there. And there in the photograph, you can see a ranger on the left.
Right.
I believe that is Robert Fuller. He was the first park historian.
Okay.
African-American gentleman. Served the park for quite a long time.
Some work that went in, not only did you have the land and the people tying about, the birthplace and the childhood home, Looks like you have some archaeology and some planning going on here, construction, things that were happening at the time.
That's correct. Every year we have, every year have an archaeological kind of, not a dig, but some research done there at the park with ground penetrating radar, and that was an example of one of the early digs, it looked like.
Yeah, early excavation, I'm going to say in the mid-1950s.
Right.
So
To try to narrow down where the actual birth site, where the cabin actually was.
which you now can identify in the park when you go there. You can say
correct.
this is where it was at. So this is some of the work
In that
in
general area.
that general area,
Yes.
right? And tying that together. So, and this is, it says 1960 entrance. So the park entrance, you've had the
From 1963.
So
Or
they're
1960s.
all right.
Old car there. Here's a choir from an early Carver day.
So once the park was established, you immediately started having Carver Day presentations and those observances.
And still do.
And
Still
still
do,
do,
right.
exactly. And I'll talk a little bit about this year's Carver Day.
And then more
There's-
recent, 2006. Tell me
Yeah, the
about this one.
dedication of the Carver Prairie Drive, which is along Highway V as you approach the park.
Right.
Yes, it is. Now, this is the house where Moses Carver lived after George had already left the left the farm. However, George did come to visit on a couple of occasions, and this is where Moses was living at that time.
Right. So they were.
So you can see the restored home if you come to the park.
That's what the house you see when you take the trail.
Exactly.
People take the trail walk
Exactly.
today. Right. And the visitor center.
Yeah,
Early
there's-
visitor center.
There's the interior of the visitor center from the 1960s.
Yes, good retro look.
Yeah,
Right.
all modeled according to the Mission 66 initiative. This is taken in our multi-purpose room on the lower level. That's where we host a lot of our events. And the park ranger is Lana Henry. She has served us so well over the years. She has served well over 40 years at Carver in different capacities. Extremely talented and dedicated young lady.
So then your logo, which we also had on a cup in front of us.
Yeah,
but
this is
explain
our
the logo.
75th logo. We're real happy with it.
KGCS operates as a service of the Department of Communication at Missouri Southern. We covered a variety of topics from the university this year, from events to news and developments. Those interviews included the athletic director and the president. Well, I know some big news off the field on football, a new video board. You mentioned that earlier. So let's share some of that information with the audience.
Sure. Yeah, the new video board with the announcement on a Thursday. But so a few things. I do have a few informational things. I think
Kind of
they're
the nuts
interesting.
and bolts of what it is. And people
So it will be 63 feet 10 inches tall, which basically puts it about 15, 20 feet above the crossbar, or I mean above the goalpost.
Goalpost, okay.
So if you go from the top of the goalpost, it's going to be
it's going to be
taller than
looming
that.
over this field.
Yes, it will be. It's going to be about 90 feet, a little over 90 feet wide. A few interesting facts. It's going to have 2.1 million LEDs in it. It's going to be a high definition.
Right.
There are, gosh, what they say, 718,000 total pixels. The actual weight of the video board itself would be about 96,000 pounds. But it's interesting enough, they're removing 300 cubic yards of soil in order for us to install this, which is 30 truckloads. And then we're filling that with 900,000 pounds of concrete.
So it's going to be very securely attached to the ground.
Well, you know, it's like a big
big as-
sail, right? When you're 60-something
winds
feet
we get
tall
around
and
here,
90
right?
feet wide, and the way the wind blows, you better make sure it's anchored in. We don't want to have that thing going over. So it's pretty pricey thing to have you go down on it. So, but 900,000 pounds of concrete should hold her down.
Wow. And that's going to be in what would be the south end zone. So when you're looking at the field, you're looking to the south, that's where you'll see it, kind of replacing where the old scoreboard used to be.
Right, yeah. And the old scoreboard really, we had to do something regardless. The old scoreboard was really a non-functional. It was, I think if I remember correctly, it was a 1991 installation. So it just wasn't up to date, and we were really struggling with keeping it running over all of those years. The parts are not replaceable.
Right.
So we had to do something anyway. We didn't have to go this big, but we really chose to. And what's interesting about this, it's a very high price ticket item, but there's a lot of value to it. There's going to be educational components for students. We're also going to engage the community with movie nights and things like that. It's going to be like a high def, 60-foot
It's more than
wide.
just come to the football game and see the big screen.
Yeah, it's going to be utilized a lot. for a lot of different functions. But it was paid for by donors and paid for by sponsors and corporate sponsors. And there's not any university resources that go into this. This was people that we had an idea, we presented it to them, and they jumped on board. And they wanted to do something like this. And it's important. It's important for Missouri Southern. It's important for Missouri Southern athletics. It's important for football and track and field and anybody that utilizes that field. It's a step in the right direction. So we're very excited about it.
It's an energized feeling, frankly. The students are back, the faculty and staff are all here, and things have kicked off to a great start.
Great. Well, I know you've had a chance to visit with the faculty and staff as a group, and you've probably met a lot of students. You had an ice cream social where they could come by and see you. And
yeah, I think we served 14 tubs of ice cream or something like that. So it's always a popular event. We're back to the semester start was a terrific day. We had a great speaker, Nicole Ling came in and just did a fabulous job, I think, of getting us all ready for the semester.
Right. Well, we'll touch on some of those subjects that you touched on that day today and so forth. But I guess you've had a number of years now to start a new year at Missouri Southern. How does this one compare to perhaps other years?
Yeah, well, actually, this is a really positive year. We're feeling very good about the last legislative session. The General Assembly was very positive about higher education. We have a new governor who seems to be focused on workforce development, which we're right in the middle of that conversation. Right. And infrastructure, which we need in this state. So I think things are looking better from Jefferson City and certainly on campus.
Right. So you're seeing a lot of that positive attitude. I know you had a big event where the faculty and staff gathered, and all the administrators got to share some news with everyone, and it was a chance to kind of open communication in a way for people.
Yeah, it was a great day. Got the back to school welcome, kind of the first opening session kickoff event. We talked about several things that day. Talked about our new mission, vision, values, statements, and the goals that we need to set for the next year, 2 or 3. And I think everybody's really ready to roll.
Right. Well, speaking of the mission and the values and so forth, I know that's something that's been in the process for a while. I know I've gone to the Board of Governors meeting and heard discussions, faculty, staff, and Senate and so forth, been having meetings. The process, you now actually have something in writing. This is what we have in place.
Right. We started, about a year ago with meetings with faculty and staff, and then spread that out to other stakeholders, the foundation board, and alumni board, people that are involved with the university. And students. We had student groups involved, and worked our way through, kind of a series of SWOT analysis, environmental scanning, and to look at our mission, vision, and values and see if they've changed at all, and should we redefine some things. And we did. We redefined our mission to really focus on a couple things, and that is to educate and graduate students, which is really our fundamental business.
Purpose for being here.
It is, and rather than the old kind of mission statement that describes we're a comprehensive university and that sort of thing. We just kind of worked through all that, and the board has met several times in work sessions to gather the information and look at it that we gained from the faculty and staff primarily, and then come up with this new mission statement, new vision statement, and the values that we think are so important to us, just from the number of words that were picked out of all of our conversations with people.
And one of the things you asked people for key words, what comes to mind. So these were part of the ingredients that came into putting that together.
Exactly. Actually what we asked for the words that, if they were absent from our mission, vision, values, would be missed, something that we really need to have there. And so as a result, in all the groups, several words came to the top. So then it was the board's job to kind of weave that all together.
Make it really into working documents.
Let's see if we can make this into sentences,
I've enjoyed hosting another year of Newsmakers programs. I want to thank everyone who appeared on the weekly interviews. I also want to thank the students, faculty, and staff who worked on this program. And I want to thank you for tuning in. I'm Judy Stiles. I hope you can join me again next week.